G'day. Oh, look, that's enough of my attempt at an Australian accent. Welcome to the latest episode of Cricket Draft Insight. Big Bash game is live, super exciting. Here is my squad announcement. Starting with batting, and just a disclaimer, this has already changed since I announced it on Twitter. Tom Rogers with the bat. I was already having concerns that he might not play, actually. A lot of speculation about Melbourne Stars lineup. Bowling's a bit weak, but they've got a lot of batting options, a lot of six hitting ability, a lot of bowling options too, which is all worth considering when we come to some more players in my team. But the news that Glenn Maxwell looks like he won't be fit for the first game, so hopefully Tom Rogers is going to play. Made a couple of scores recently in first class cricket, some starts in the T20 Blast last year, and crucially, what caught my eye was he made 196 in a List A game last season. So I think he's got it in him. I'm hoping he's one of my band of upward trajectory players, which basically means players without great stats who I hope can do a bit better. But yeah, Tom Rogers of Melbourne Stars, double game week obviously. So hopefully he plays. We'll see where he is in the order. I'm hoping he's opening and can make some runs. Next up is Jake Weatherald. Now he's one, I think I saw him bat a few years ago and he made some runs and sort of dropped off the radar a bit, but then came back into the side last year. Had a bit of a renaissance, made some scores. Big 186 in the Sheffield Shield recently. There was a quick fire like 55 from 33 or something in the One Day Cup. Destructive batter, and yeah, he's also in my batting lineup. Next up is a selection that's had a bit of a lukewarm reception. Curtis Patterson at Sydney Sixers, another one having a spectacular renaissance, dropped from the New South Wales side, stripped of the captaincy, looked like he was drifting out of the game, and then injuries to, well, certainly Daniel Hughes has opened the door for Curtis Patterson to get back in. Sheffield Shield, a big 167 out the other day, a couple of 90s. He hasn't failed yet. Again, I saw him bat once in the Big Bash. I think maybe I saw him when he scored his career best score. He looked good to me. I'm confident he can take that Sheffield Shield form into the Big Bash. And like a few players, maybe just kick on as a T20 player a bit later in his career. Now, some people were questioning Daniel Hughes' selection. I picked him from the off in the T20 Blast. Some people suggested he was a bit slow, a bit of an anchor. Strike rate, leading run scorer in that competition, strike rate was 167, career strike rate's 129. So before the Blast, it was probably 120, 125. Curtis Patterson's strike rate's 120, but I'm optimistic, like Hughes, he can up it a bit. Thinking he's getting that number 3 slot. So yeah, Curtis Patterson at number 3. On to the all-rounders, contrary to what I said on Twitter. So I've now currently put Beau Webster in as captain. Now, we'll know whether he's in the Australian squad. I think in the team, I think the test starts the day before. They normally announce the side before, but obviously we don't know whether it'll be released. So fortunately, Perth-Melbourne is the opening game, Melbourne Stars. So we'll get some answers about Webster. At one point I had Joe Clark in, but you're going to have to take him out. And then I've tried to even it. So I've got 2 Melbourne Stars, I've got 2 Melbourne Renegades players for the double game week. And I think I'm reasonably well set up with other players for who's having a double game week and just ultimately having a squad that I'm pleased with. Now, Webster's one of those, like I say, Melbourne Stars have a lot of bowling options. So maybe he doesn't bowl 4 overs. If he's playing, I think he's batting at 3. So obviously really turned it on in first class cricket last few years. Had his moments, really capable of clearing the ropes. We've seen that in England in the T20 Blast. So yeah, it's just a case of whether he's playing basically. But as it stands, he'll be my captain. No Maxwell. So confirmed, have I said that? Glenn Maxwell looks like he's injured for the first game. So you'd think Melbourne Stars would be pretty keen to get Webster. But like I say, it's all tied into the Test 11, whether they don't play Mitch Marsh, maybe. So we'll see what happens. But as it stands, Beau Webster. Next one is Jack Edwards. And sorry, what I think I was going to say about Webster is if you looked at his career numbers, you'd say maybe he doesn't bowl enough. Jack Edwards has 11 wickets in 42 T20 matches and he doesn't have a 50. So again, you can just look at his selection and say, Paul, what on earth are you doing? But this guy has become a talismanic all-rounder for New South Wales in the longer formats. A lot of 50-plus scores. He took 5 for 41 and 5 for 41 in the Sheffield Shield the other day. So his 11 wickets in 42 T20 games came in 11 matches last year. So really evolving as a bowler. I think he's a 4 overs guy. I was going to pick Enriquez at one point because I thought he's capable of hitting sixes, but he's an all-rounder. He's not going to bowl enough. So Jack Edwards, I think, is a really good alternative to the all-rounders that we're more familiar with because they played in the Blast in England. Like I say, really kicked on in other formats, and I expect him to continue to kick on in the T20 Blast. A bit cheaper than some. They have a double game week. I think it's 2, maybe 3. So yeah, Jack Edwards, Sydney Sixers. I've then got Paul Walter, who's one I don't think I've ever picked in the T20 Blast, just because obviously, I can't pick Jordan Thompson, Benny Howell, Ben Green. They're not here in this competition. And I think I was thinking about Walter, thinking, a bit curious, I've never really picked him. If I try to sound like I know what I'm talking about, I think he bowls a heavy ball, like quite short. He bowled quite some short bouncers that are difficult to get away. He's in the game. Might not be 4 overs. No, he's not batting at 3. Really got to be picking all-rounders who are in the game. I've said this. Can't just be, I know Maxwell might be a batter who might bowl a bit of spin, but generally I need to not be picking, Fabian Allen's a curious one, but I need to not be picking guys who are batting at 7 and then might bowl a bit of spin. Paul Walter should be in the game, bat and bowl, even if he's coming in later, get the opportunity to smack a few sixes. Normally quite involved in the field. Exciting to have him in my team, actually. Just feels quite a natural, instinctive selection. So he's in. My final all-rounder role, so I just mentioned who I haven't picked, having just had a slight fiddle due to the double game weeks and just trying to get the players I want and really like. I guess Chris Green is the big omission. He's obviously a top player. They don't, and because of the money and trying to have a sub in every position, which I like to have. But then Sydney Thunder are only single game weeks, so I'm quite happy at the moment. I've taken Chris Green out. I'm sure he'll do very well, as we saw across formats in England. He's the big omission. Now, part of the reason for that is I didn't really anticipate having any Melbourne Renegades players. They were the one team I was really struggling with, maybe Hobart too, but they're double game weeking. So Tom Rogers, who we saw at Kent, didn't have a great time with the ball, actually. Smacked a few sixes. Yes, he's a bowling all-rounder, but I think he'll take wickets. He didn't do as well last year. I think he was out of the team, maybe injured a bit. A few years before, he's pretty sensational. His wickets to match ratio is quite high. I think he'll get a bat in a poor team, even if it's, 25 or 14 or something. He's capable of clearing the ropes, possibly bowls toward the end. I think that's really crucial. Go back to Daniel Sams, who a couple of years ago I didn't pick in the Blast because he hadn't done very well with the bat. His batting's a bit, doesn't always come off, but he took 4 wickets in the final over of a T20 Blast game. So if you can pick guys, AJ Tye's a really good example. Not quite got him in my team. Strike rate, economy rate isn't quite as bad as I thought. He tends to be expensive, but he takes wickets, cheap wickets bowling at the death. I'm optimistic Rogers in a double game week maybe bowls at the death as well and picks up some cheap wickets and scores a few runs. So yeah, so like I say, I think Webster's my captain and Rogers my vice captain. That could change. It could, does Webster bowl enough? That's how it is as it stands. Wicket keeping, I've gone for Jimmy Pearson. So though I've picked a few players I said I wasn't going to pick, I don't have Matty Hurst and I don't have Jaffer Chauhan, who are 2 players I really like. Chauhan from Yorkshire, I think got a lot to offer, bat and in the field, even though we've mostly seen with the ball. And Hurst was one, I clocked season before last and then had him in my team last year. But I'm going with Pearson. There's a lot of wicket keepers, Harper, Nielsen. The T20 numbers aren't great, but they are kicking on in other formats. Pearson might depend where he bats, but he's a good wicket keeper. And I have generally gone for the, I don't like international selection, getting called into other leagues. I know Hurst is presumably there for the long road, and I really like Perth Scorchers, but I've kind of gone for this band of Australian, players. Pearson, you just want to like, again, I think I happened to see him, some of the games I've seen, like the day he scored his career best score. So in my mind, Patterson, Pearson, some of these players are like good T20 players. But again, I just think that, you know me, I like my differential, bit alternative, upward trajectory. He can contribute. Okay. On to bowling. We'll start with Fergus O'Neill. He's a really interesting one because Cricket Draft mentioned he was popular. He's obviously very cheap because he doesn't have a T20 history. Again, I did see him, I think it was the last couple of games last year he played. Now, he's got nearly 100 first-class wickets at an average of less than 20. A lot of people mentioned Joe Paris, who also, phenomenal first-class record, averages less than 20. Seen him bowl in the T20, and he looked, beyond innocuous. But he might come good. Left-armers often do. But O'Neill, just signed for Nottinghamshire. I think this guy's a real deal. People have been raving about him for a long time. I think wickets will come when he can bat too. And Melbourne Renegades. So a lot of people might have picked him because he's just cheap and they just want like some bench fodder. You know, a lot of people are going to do it like that, cheap subs. But then as it happens, he's got a great record, which is why some people might be picking him. And then because they're playing twice in the first week, like it all adds up. So not surprised he's popular actually. And you know, easy to ignore because he doesn't have a T20 history. And admittedly, I myself, maybe some of the mystery's gone, but then if they didn't have a double game week, he'd probably be on my bench. So if he tears it up in the first few weeks, obviously going to be a great buy. So yeah, Fergus O'Neill. Next up, his first name on my team sheet. This is the closest I could have worn a yellow t-shirt. This is Perth Scorchers orange, best I could do. It's Jason Behrendorff. When I started watching the Big Bash, I know they've been successful. I'm not like a glory supporter. Perth Scorchers have just this consistent core of players. Behrendorff, Ty, Richardson, Marsh, Inglis, you know. Behrendorff is metronomic. I think he's a fantastic bowler. His career economy rate is 7.5. In the Big Bash, it's 6.95. So I said that most of the leading wicket takers in the Big Bash are pacers. Okay, best economy is normally spinners. 123 wickets in 96 matches, something like that. He's a pace bowler. He bowls in the power play, right? His economy rate in the Big Bash is 6.95. Like, that is sensational for a non-spinner who bowls, you know, from the off. Didn't have a great time in the recent Abu Dhabi T10, I think. Didn't take a load of wickets. And last year's economy was a bit higher. But I still think this guy, did I say metronomic? Love him. Got to be in my team. Like I say, you can make a case AJ Ty, Jai Richardson. Ty maybe bowls at death. Richardson maybe gets a bat too. I just love Behrendorff, so he's in. And then that brings me to Lloyd Pope, who's, you know, tore it up against England in the Under-19 World Cup a few years ago. It's been a slow burner for him in the longer formats, but he just came good last year in the T20s alongside Cameron Boyce. One or two people were questioning whether he starts. Based on last year, Lloyd Pope better be starting. Leg spin, exciting, taking wickets. Can't quite remember. They double game week, second week. Maybe some of the blue teams just kind of blur to me. But I think they might have double game week. Lloyd Pope is just one of those. I was craving, you know, to have in my team. So that's my 11, yeah. So just to clarify, I might even have to refer to my list here because I've done a bit of tinkering. Tom Rogers, Jake Weatherald, Curtis Patterson with the bat. Beau Webster, Jack Edwards, Paul Walter, Tom Rogers as the all-rounders. Webster captain, Rogers vice-captain. You know, I like to think destructive batters and all-rounders who are in the game. Jimmy Pearson as wicket-keeper. Then Fergus O'Neill, Jason Behrendorff, Lloyd Pope, real wicket-taking threat. And the bowlers. On the bench, so I have currently put Ashton Turner in. I know I said I wasn't, he's an injury doubt. But just when I was tinkering, the money, looking ahead to the double game week if he does come back. I've always thought of Ashton Turner as a very pragmatic player who comes in the middle order. We see so many people gravitate towards the top order. There's value in being a specialist middle order player. Absorbs pressure and then launches. And whilst I know he's capable of clearing the ropes like that, because I think sometimes he just kind of weathers the storm a bit and then goes on. I was a bit surprised actually that he's either the 5th or 6th highest strike rate in the history of the Big Bash. Tim David is the top one, and obviously Tim David would really be responsible for Ashton Turner not having much more international opportunities. I think they're both listed as batters. I don't think Tim David gets much of a bowl given the spin options Hobart Hurricanes have, which I'll come to. And Ashton Turner, obviously, some injuries to spinners in Perth, which could bring me to Matthew Spores, but at the moment he's not on my bench. I love Ashton Turner. Like I say, I think he's a really pragmatic guy, great leader, really good batter. I think he should have played more for Australia. Been good to see him doing well in the other formats, but he just does have a habit of getting injured nowadays. But Ashton Turner is currently on my bench, but if he's injured, then hopefully my batters play. Although I do have a wicket keeper, but I'm not sure if he's going to play. Anyway, next up, Nikhil Chowdhury. So I do want representation from every team. He rocked up last year. Interesting story, of course, coming quite late to the game. Played a few games in India. Moved to Australia. Scored some quick runs. Took some wickets. Didn't have a great time in the Abu Dhabi T10, but did score 47 out of 16. He's on my bench. Hobart Hurricanes are only like single game week in until towards the end. I think maybe they have 2 double game weeks later on. A lot can happen, of course, with lineups and performance. So I've gone back to having Matthew Gilks as my wicket keeper. Remember seeing him. I saw him, his debut, and it was like the 2nd or 3rd ball in a match. He was wicket keeping, and the ball just came to him like this, and he dropped it. And Shane Watson was next to him and like, It's got a bit better. Like I said, there's a few wicket keepers who have so-so records, but have improved and are in form. Again, all a bit of a blur. Sam Billings playing for the same team as Gilkes now, so maybe not keeping wicket, but I like to have a sub in every position. Matthew Gilkes, and also he's my only Sydney Thunder player because I've ended up not picking Chris Green, so I just feel comfortable having someone from every team. And Ben Dwarshuis. Now I know a lot of people say, Paul, you've got quite, like, Dwarshuis is quite expensive for your bench, and you could then not have him and pick Matthew Short or something. But I think I'm set up well for the weeks. Like Sydney Sixers have a double game week, might be week 3. Dwarshuis is coming back from injury, of course. A bit weird Durham, wasn't it? Because then they didn't score any runs in the first 2 games, and they had Turner, and then they brought Bellingham in, so it was like Dwarshuis was there as an overseas player not playing, which is interesting because quite a few of the overseas players in the Big Bash, quite a few people speculating might not be guaranteed starters, which is unusual. So we'll see what happens. But for me, Dwarshuis, yeah. One point I wasn't going to go for him because Chauhan, but like Dwarshuis is up there with Behrendorff, like top, 4 or 5 leading wicket takers, probably balls at the death. And we don't get to see it much, but he can bat actually, he can strike a ball. So Ben Dwarshuis. So guys, that's my team. I'm really excited. It's full of optimism. I've disappointed in county competitions in recent times, but I have had a couple. I've had a couple of top 20 finishes. Thought this was a good opportunity for one, but I've been looking at people's teams. Oh dear. But then Maxwell's injured, right? I think Hardy's out now. 1 or 2 others. Actually, I'm a big Nick Maddinson fan. They don't have a great record. McAllister Wright and Daniel Hughes, who obviously would have been popular. That might have been my batting lineup, but they're injured. Tom Rogers, Jake Weatherald and Curtis Patterson it is. Hugely exciting. Great to see. I think a lot of people really happy to play this game. Great that Cricket Draft have run it. I think it's really great for us to have our fix. Maybe not an appropriate cricket word, but in the middle of the winter, just to keep us going. So yeah, hope to do well. Hope that you do well. Let me know in the comments section what you think of my squad. Go easy. Let me know who's in your squad. Can't wait. Wish you all the best. How's that?